Brief history as an artist. So I don't know if I'm an artist, to tell you the truth, but I used to really enjoy painting and drawing in school, and it was really a lot of fun. And when I got to high school, it more or less got discouraged, so I really didn't do much after that. And I always enjoyed painting and coloring, and later on, copying paintings. I was very influenced by this Russian painter called Nicholas Roerich, who was a Russian artist, and he did this great, magnificent paintings of the Himalayas and really beautiful stuff. Pretty much a hobby, and my wife would say it's only a hobby. Okay, it's a hobby. Basically, I was in college, and 4 years at a community college, and basically failed out, flunked. And so I got drafted. And this was in 1967, and then I enlisted in the Air Force because I didn't want to join the Marines. They were drafting the Marines at the time, and nothing personal. My best buddy Steve is a Marine, but I didn't think I could make it in 1967. And so I ended up joining the Air Force, and I spent a lot of time traveling, it was interesting because joining the Air Force and being in the service helped me join humanity. Seriously, I'm from New York City, and so I met people from North Dakota and Kansas and all over, and it humanizes you, it enculturates you, and for me, that was a really big part of being in the service, was learning how other people live, and making friends with people that you never would meet. I kind of wish we had the service today because it mixes people, and it kind of gives you a common goal. I like being part of a team. I like being part of learning how to do things when you didn't know anything. So when I first joined the Air Force, I took the test. The first year I got pretty good grades, but everything in electronics. Electronics I got a 0. I got everything wrong. So the next year when I took the Air Force test, I guessed, and I got an 80 in electronics. And so that's what they put me in, electronics. So the Air Force taught me how to learn. And it was just interesting to see how they took people off the streets, not even with high school diplomas, and they ended up doing all sorts of things like fixing $1 million equipment and so on. So that was impressive. I like that. I like seeing how people grow. That was an important part of the service. And also being trained and then never seeing these people again. So you're part of a team, and the whole team gets disassembled, and you go to another place, and then you work. So I like that. And to me, that was like really, really good. So I was in a career field called airborne weather, where we would work on these air sampling equipment, things that would monitor the air, radiation, and so on. And whenever the Russians or Chinese would test atomic weapons, we would fly our planes through their clouds to kind of collect these radioactive samples. And I would work on the equipment that would do the sampling. We did a lot of things that kind of dangerous, but it was okay. It was part of being in the military. You face life and death. And that's another thing about the military is I've never seen anyone personally die, though I know people have died. And so from the early on in the military, it was important to think about death. So in my first 3 years, I spent time in Argentina, Panama, Alaska on temporary missions. I was in Argentina when my father died, and I had to be flown back to the United States. It was the same weekend that man walked on the moon. And so it was an interesting synchronicity of such achievement and then dealing with personal loss and everything. It makes you think about life, about and death. And then I volunteered to go to Thailand. And so for the last year, I was stationed in Thailand because I wanted to go to a Buddhist country. And it was an assignment, and I was able to get it. So I was stationed in Thailand and did a lot of Buddhist things. And after that, I was in Japan for the rest of my time. Not much art. I did only one painting, which was, and you're going to cut this, but this was a painting of Richard Nixon with his finger up his nose. And it was because when you're in the military, you play cards, and everybody has signals to their partner. I got no hearts and stuff left. So one of the signals was putting your finger up your nose if you have no hearts. So it was in the end, it was in 1971, war was going on, anti-war. So I did this painting of Nixon with his finger up his nose and stuck it up in the barracks. And that's about the last one I did for a while. Being in the military was, especially during the Vietnam War, kind of a counterculture. You're in the culture of a counterculture, and being overseas was better than being stationed in the United States. People stationed in the United States during the war was a lot harder because you're part of the establishment, and so your family feels that. Then after the war, I did some work at an alternative school in San Antonio where we used to work with art, science, and religion. So it was an alternative, pretty much a non-public school. Then after that, speaking of service, I decided that I wanted to join the Peace Corps. So I did that. I joined the Peace Corps in '76 and was stationed in Nepal and was able to continue my Buddhist studies and still no painting, though. I really didn't do any painting again until about 5 or 6 years ago. I ran into a poster for the Warriors Art Room, and it was over at Leeds, the military base there. And I called up Steve and I asked him about it, and I started going there and started painting again. So that's basically how I got back into painting. I kind of abandoned it. I always appreciated it. And then when I started going with Steve and visiting him, he had his first Warriors Art Room was in a church. So I visited him there and I started painting it. And it was good. It really was helpful. I started painting Dharma stuff, which is Buddhist things. And one of my paintings is an example of that. And then I started doing some other things, which is the PTSD. When I did this for the Shape by Service a couple of years ago. My experience in the service was interesting because I flunked out of college when I joined the service, and when I got out, went back to school, got degrees and everything, and it just made life more interesting and also life more intense, and you learn how to prioritize, and so that was important. Being in the military helped me learn to prioritize and make decisions and live with the decisions. It was important to do that.
Do you want to speak a bit more to some of the imagery or theme?
So the Shape by Service, I always like having a goal. I think it's interesting when you have shows and things because it inspires people to do things. So I was inspired to do PTSD painting. And so the painting that you see here is kind of an amalgam of how I felt when I got out of the military. So you feel kind of alone. Like you're stepping on glass, and underneath there's all these people looking, and basically this actually says SOS spelled out in Morse code. Unless you knew you're looking for Morse code, you wouldn't see that. And then I have this. It took me months to figure out how to do this. The planes in an Escher format. So the idea is, for me, the first time I was stationed overseas in Thailand, and we went on a mission. I came back, I saw the flag, I never felt the same. I mean, I feel differently now about the flag after being out on a mission than seeing it. So this kind of represents like the overwhelming view that you see when you're a soldier, airman, sailor, and your life's on the line, and you come back, you see the flag, you go, yeah, it's pretty good, I feel protected. So that was part of that. And just some other stuff in there. This is actually a copy of the one that I did for this show. And I copied it because I didn't have this part filled in. That was just empty. So I decided to fill in going home, like different houses and stuff like that. So if you see the original, it's just this maze. And then I decided to continue and, add to it. So I thought it added value to that. Then this painting, this is an example of like a lot of the Dharma paintings. This is called the Tara of Pioneer Valley. So I put this in the Big E last year. I got a second prize or something, big deal. But it's a pencil drawing. And I do Buddhist practices. I do certain things. I do a thing called dream yoga. Have you ever heard of that, dream yoga? So basically what it is, have you heard of lucid dreaming? Okay, so basically it's getting lucid in your dreams, but then using your dreams to benefit your life, daily life. So example, in a lucid dream, you could do something like change a cup into an elephant or something like that. And learning to actually become more flexible as a person. So instead of going to a psychiatrist, you could actually just work on yourself in your dreams and really do a nice job. I work with one of the teachers that I work with, his name is Charlie Morley, and he works with veterans with PTSD. And so there was actually a study that I was part of a couple of months ago where they took 50 veterans who had PTSD, not only Americans, but British. He's British, some from other countries from Africa. And these are all folks having PTSD, much more recent than me. I mean, 50 years ago in the military. And he taught them how to work with lucid dreaming, how to work with your fears at night. And the whole theory is if you have fears at night, what you would do is you embrace the fears because they're part of you and they want to be integrated. So I had this dream during the session where I was on this island and this big monster was coming and everybody was running toward the beach. And then I stopped and I said, why am I running? And I went back and the monster was taking over the whole island and I touched it and it turned into a whole bunch of tiny worms and ran away. And it was, facing the fear. And so at night, I've had other dreams where I would be facing fear and doing something. I had this one dream I was in London and I was walking down the street with a box of pizza, big box, square box of pizza. And people are running out of the subway station and they're yelling, there's a monster, there's a lizard and stuff. So I went down there and there's this big lizard and I hit it with the pizza box, and it turned into a bunch of salamanders and ran away. I even did a picture of that. And I like doing that, painting pictures or drawing pictures of some of these things because it really helps me concretize and show other folks. So it really, in dealing with PTSD and dealing with stress and those kinds of things, we think we forget them, but we don't. We just put them away where we can't see them. Because they're still part of us. They're part of our body, they're part of our mind, they're part of our experience, they're part of how we react. They're our habits. And so the way to deal with those habits, Steve does it with his art, how he feels, and that's good. And I think using Dharma to be able to work on yourself at night in your dreams really is a way to really extend the feelings. See, because you can't hide from your feelings. I mean, you can push them down. And in the military, people tend to do that because you have the next person up. Someone can't do the mission, next person up. So it's interesting. And this study was published. It was just published like last month. If you're interested, I can send you a copy of that. So out of the 50 people, I think 47 experienced relief from using the dream yoga, the techniques in their dreams to fight their fears. So, I mean, how great is that? Be able to, several were women who had been either sexually assaulted or, been in the war and had these gruesome experiences. And yet they were able to confront them in the dream. Whereas, if you go to a psychiatrist or you go to group therapy, you get to a surface level, but you don't get deep because our habits go so deep. And the idea of working with them that way, through art, through dreams, is positive. I mean, you want to help people. And what else is there? You don't take anything with you. You don't take any of your cars or your houses. You don't take your camera, good looking camera, but you don't take it. Shoes, your money, your house, you don't take any of that. So all you take is your so-called good deeds or your good habits. So work on those. And that's what I appreciate about like the Warriors Armor, like Steve. I mean, I've seen people come in and be messed up and he'd sit down patiently and work with them. I have friends come visit, so first thing I always do is bring them to the Warriors Armor, let them work with Steve or just paint and everything. And now, so that's important to me. That's what is important. Basically, most of the paintings I do are Dharma paintings, like this kind of stuff. But I'm also working on a series of, I call it Veterans Remembrance. So I'm going to do some of those, and I'm not an abstract guy. Like Steve is big abstract. I mean, really big abstract, and I like that. And to me, the abstract stuff is what you see when you die, or seeing through reality. So another thing about art is the fact that it does help you go beyond the basic reality. Because when you think about what we see, think about everything, nothing is like the way we see it. When you see me, you're just seeing some things in your brain. I mean, you're not seeing me, you're just seeing all these outside things. There's an interesting book called Why Materialism is Baloney. It's worthwhile looking at. A lot of the spiritual philosophies are, in general, basically idealism, so that we really don't see reality. We actually see just an abbreviation, because if we saw reality, we'd be stuck. We couldn't move. When you look at like your hand, for example, if you go deeply into it, you find atoms. We only see the solid part. And when you look at yourself, what is yourself? If I lose my thumb, is it still myself? I lose 2 fingers, is it still myself? What do I have to lose to not be myself anymore? And then the mind. You think about the mind. Where is the mind? Is it up here? Or, can you really trace where it is? In Asian cultures, they think the mind is here in the heart. Other cultures think the mind is in a different place. So when I look at abstract art, I like it because it makes me feel okay, and also it reminds me of what's going to happen when we die. When we die, it's like when you dream. When you dream, it's your mind's there, but all your body senses are gone. Your body is sleeping, so there's no sense in there. Yet in your dreams, don't you have a body? Don't you have a body? Well, next time you're in a dream, look at your body, look at your hand, and then turn it around a couple of times. And all of a sudden, you're not going to see the hand. The hand may change, or try and stick your hand through your other hand or through a wall. I've had dreams where I'll do that. And so, the abstract art kind of reminds me of that non-reality, which I like. But that's not my type. I like to plan the pictures that I do. I really like to plan stuff. So when I look at abstract art, I like it because it makes me feel okay, and also it reminds me of what's going to happen when we die. When we die, it's like when you dream. When you dream, it's your mind's there, but all your body senses are gone. Your body is sleeping, so there's no sense in there. Everything shapes you. Everything. And it's interesting for me because I was always humiliated very, very much because. And I mentioned that I was stationed in Alaska a little bit. I actually worked in Alaska too. I spent 10 years in Alaska working, mostly with Eskimo students, Yupik Eskimo. And you learn a lot because they have a different way of expressing themselves. For example, we're all Westerners, right? And I assume you're all Westerners. So when we speak, we have a thing called a pause pattern. So I'll speak, you'll speak. I'll speak, you'll speak, and so on. Well, Eskimos, our pause pattern's about 2 to 3 seconds. We don't stop and think, we just kind of talk and have a conversation. Eskimos, their normal pause pattern is 6 seconds. So when they're speaking, they want to say something else, we jump in. So they never can get a word in edgewise. So the silent native, we think that they have nothing to express. And yet, it's just a whole cultural difference. And so the more I lived in different cultures, the more I got humiliated because I learned about things. And art helps you express that kind of thing too.